About just a short time ago, I got a breaking news alert on my phone from WBAP because I have the app that CeeDee Lamb is being sat the rest of the season. You just heard Sean Allen talking about that. Sean is covering the news tonight out of the WBAP News Center along with John Ingham. The two of them will be doing news throughout the evening. Producing for me tonight is Matt Dolphin. Matt is partnering with me, so when you call in, you can always, Matt will be the one that answers the phone call, and you and I will get a chance to talk. The name's Jeff, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock. Chris is back on January 2nd in this chair. He is covering this week and next with for Casey in the mornings. 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So Chris will be back tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. I'll be covering for him tomorrow night. I want to talk about CeeDee Lamb, but give me about 5 minutes, maybe 6 minutes on that, and we'll get to that. CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys sitting out the rest of the season. The question I got to ask is it a tank? Are they tanking it? Are they tanking the team for a better draft position? I'll explain that in about 5 to 6 minutes. First, I want to start with the news from today. And that is, what the heck was that weather that came through here today? Significant. Now, I've scrolled up and down across social media across North Texas, and it's interesting in watching the comments because you'll hear people say, oh, you guys are overreacting. It's Rain-mageddon, so to speak. That's all it is, just rain. But what you got to understand about the weather in this area is and the why this is all important and why it's significant and impacts you. This radio station, WBAP, has a really big signal and covers North Texas. This is not just a Dallas station. This is North Texas. And when you think about North Texas, you got to realize that just from downtown where the studios are here to a place like Waxahachie, it's it's 35, 40 miles or so. That's a 35, 44-minute trip. If you drive, call it an hour north, up to Prosper, Frisco, McKinney, up in those areas, it's an hour. It's 60 minutes. So the distance between Waxahachie and McKinney can be 100 miles. In a 100-mile area, you can have significant weather changes. So, for example, for the heck of it, I got online and looked at it a little while ago. Waxahachie today had about just over 1.5 inches of rain. Downtown Dallas had half of that. North of the downtown area, up towards McKinney, it was almost an inch and a quarter. So you got to realize a station of this magnitude. That is your news station, your weather station. When news breaks out, we break in. When you have significant news impacting our listening area, we break in. We cover it. We tell you what's going on. We do push notifications. And when Dallas Love Field and DFW start canceling flights, delaying flights because of weather, you need to know that. The good news is if you have our app, then you know that. You knew that as soon as it happened because we do notifications that we post out. Most recent notification I got just in the last, hour and a half or so was CeeDee Lamb sitting out for the Cowboys. So what I would tell you is if you don't have the WBAP app, you're missing out on a lot. I would encourage you to go to your app store on your phone, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. Go into your app store, type in WBAP. We have an app. Download it and keep it available because we send out push notifications all the time on breaking news. So you're always up to speed. So if you're out of town on business, if you're out of town traveling for family over the holidays, anytime you're out of town, you're going to get a notification what's going on right here in North Texas and the Dallas-Fort Worth area in the Metroplex. So make sure you've got the app. Download WBAP from your app store. You can also, at the bottom of the app, you can click Listen Live and listen to this station anytime, anywhere across this country on your phone. So you can use it as your radio. There's real value there for the listener, for you to stay connected with what's going on here in our area. And again, when you talk about weather in a big city like this, a big community like this, the difference between an hour north to an hour south could be 150 miles and 100 miles. Heck, and the difference in the weather in those 100 miles can be significant. I mean, you could have 60, 70 mile an hour winds and 30 miles south of us and 20 mile an hour winds 30 miles north. So where you live and where you were during the day today, where you live and where you were working today, might not have been bad, just heavy rain. But for others, it was much more significant. And I know this, as a news talk guy myself, as a listener of talk radio, when I see bad weather outside, first thing I do is turn on the radio to see what the heck's going on. If I don't have any notifications, if I'm not up to speed on that, I go to the radio, listen to it, and see what the heck's going on. And the good news is you do that right here on News Talk 820 WBAP and also 93.3 FM. You can also get it online and then through your app. So download the app, check it out, and there's real value there. Jeff's the name, Westside Jeff. I want to get to CeeDee Lamb. I mentioned just a little while ago, got a notification on my phone about CeeDee Lamb being sat. There was breaking news late today that the Cowboys rules wide receiver CeeDee Lamb out for the season with a shoulder injury. Now, Lamb's been playing through that injury and will miss the last 2 games of the season. That's important to me because I'm a fantasy football guy. And this weekend is the last weekend for my league in fantasy football. I finished number 1 in my league. The person that finished number 2, her team name is Lady Danny. So I'm playing Lady Danny. And the winner this week wins our league, wins a trophy. Winner gets $300, $400, something like that. Second place person gets half of that at best. It's not about the money. It's about the title. I want to walk around the building saying, how'd you finish this year? Well, I want to finish higher than she does. I won the league 2 years ago. I came in 3rd last year and want to win it again this year. And coincidentally, the reason the CeeDee Lamb story is important is because in fantasy football, in my league this week, my opponent, Lady Danny, has CeeDee Lamb. So that was good for me. As soon as that happened, since I saw the push notification from WBAP on my phone, I immediately went to my fantasy lineup to see A, who has CeeDee Lamb, and B, how that's going to impact their team. And then when I saw it was my opponent, I thought, okay, I immediately got to go seeing what the Cowboys are going to do as a backup receiver to CeeDee, because I want to trump her if I can. I want to be able to, depending on what I'm seeing across fantasy sites, who are they going to replace CeeDee with? Who's going to get the targets? Who's going to get? There ain't nobody like CeeDee Lamb. He's a generational player. There's no doubt about it. That's why the Cowboys gave him a crap ton of money and signed him for a long-term deal. But if I can get his backup, the person that's going to pick up his targets before she can, what do you think that does for my fantasy team? That's what I'm looking for. So I didn't identify the one person I think that's going to absorb those targets. I got a couple names in mind. I have to scout that. I don't have time during the radio show to do that, but I'll scout it a little more. So I want to talk about CeeDee Lamb and continue that conversation. I got to hit a break and then 3.5 minutes long on the other side of it. I want to ask you a question. As a Cowboy fan, is it possible the Cowboys are sitting him to get a better draft position this year? Because there's a significant difference in those draft positions and the players available and what that means for the Cowboys next year. And the question is, what's that do to competitive balance in the NFL? It's a significant part of what's going on in sports today. We'll talk about that in about 3.5 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Kroc on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. So just a little while ago, we did a notification to BAP app users about CeeDee Lamb. Earlier today, we did several notifications about the weather in the area. And speaking of weather, by the way, I want to talk about CeeDee in about 60 seconds. But speaking of weather, our normal high in Dallas right now in this area is if you look at the norms, and I always like following that because I'm just a weather geek is what I am. Westside Jeff is my name. Our normal highs right now in weather is about a high of 56 and a low of 37. So that's our typical average temperature this time of the year, high of 56, a low of 37. the next 4 days, the next really 4 days are going to be significantly higher than that. It looks like almost 20 degrees higher. Tomorrow's high is about 71, 72. Saturday's about 72. Sunday's about 70. And Monday, 79 degrees. That's almost 20 degrees higher than normal. So we're in line for some pretty good weather over the next 4 days. Significant importance coming up on the tail end of Christmas vacation, Christmas week, as a lot of people have the time off and they travel in and out of town. Many of us have family in town from around the country, and it's just great to have that kind of weather. So enjoy it. It's 20-degree average temperature higher than normal. Good to know. Name's Jeff, Westside Jeff, in for Chris Crock. Bunch of ways you can connect with me. I'm across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, and Instagram. And you can also call me at 800-288-9227. When you do, you'll talk to my producer partner, Matt, and he'll put you on the air. We can talk, like Trey from Duncanville. Trey, thanks for listening. You're on the Chris Crock Show, talking to Westside Jeff. Got a comment about CeeDee Lamb?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I'm calling you as a Dallas Cowboys fan, lifelong since Thanksgiving Day of 72. But I'm going to say, I'm just not, how can I say this? I'm not convinced the Cowboys are going to ever go to the Super Bowl, regardless of who it is, a quarterback, wide receiver, running back. I always ask people one question only, okay? Have the Dallas Cowboys done anything to significantly improve the offensive line in the last 25 years?
Well, I got to tell you, about, I don't know what year it was, 4 or 5 years ago, they had one of the best offensive lines in all of football. 6 years ago, maybe, but they've just aged out of that. That's when they also had Zeke, and Zeke had a phenomenal couple years, and Dak was relatively new. I mean, Dak looked like an all-pro because of that, right? But the defense was a problem, and they didn't have CeeDee Lamb and the receivers that they do now. But you know what? I can't disagree with you, Trey. You know what? History would tell you they haven't been in the Super Bowl, and I'd have to look that up, 30-some years? I mean, think about that. Quote-unquote, America's team hasn't been in the Super Bowl for how long?
30 years almost. I
contend that the problem is Jerry Jones, the Jones family. They need to bring in a business-minded general manager and not the owner. Owners should own, general managers should be general managers, and coaches should coach. That's my attitude. They need to change something up.
Well, we do have a coach named Jerry Jones, yes, and he is the problem. The last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl, they had the greatest offensive line ever, and it's just gone down in quality, and Jerry's done nothing to improve it, and that's what we're going to keep on having. That's my opinion. It doesn't really matter who he is, a quarterback or running back or wide receiver. Until you address the offensive line and significantly improve it, it's not going to change. Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin would have never had the numbers they would have had. They never would have been in the Pro Bowl. They never would have been in the Hall of Fame had it not been for that offensive line.
Yeah, I hear you, Trey. Thank you for calling, and thank you for listening. I appreciate you being a part of the show tonight. Good comments. We're talking about CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb today was ruled out for the rest of the season because of a shoulder injury. Cowboys announced this late today that CeeDee Lamb, the wide receiver, has been ruled out the rest of the year with an ongoing shoulder injury. He'll miss the final 2 games of the regular season for the Cowboys. And coincidentally, the Cowboys have been eliminated from postseason play. So that was the news late today. And again, the push notification went out to the phones, those of us that have the WBAP app. Lamb originally hurt his shoulder in November, but continued playing through it. And according to the statement from the Cowboys, tests showed that Lamb's injury had gotten worse and that he required treatment. As of now, as of the latest, Cowboys say he will not need surgery, according to the team. Now, Cowboys' statement on CeeDee Lamb said additional examinations and scans this week on CeeDee's shoulder have determined that his injury has now progressed to a point that he will be listed as, quote-unquote, out for the remaining 2 games of the season. He'll undergo process of treatment. Lamb and the Cowboys agreed to a 4-year, $136 million extension in August, keeping the 25-year-old receiver in Dallas long term. Now, let me be clear on a couple things on this. Listen, I love football. I love the NFL. And by the way, we'll talk about Beyonce in just a few minutes. Yesterday, she performed at NRG Stadium at the Houston Texans game, and that lit up social media. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But let me be clear on CeeDee Lamb. The Cowboys have a record of 7-8 right now. And as of right now, if the season we're in now, they would have a draft position of, I think, about 15th. So they'd have 15th choice in the draft. If they lose the last two games by benching, by quote-unquote benching CeeDee Lamb to protect him, okay, they could very well lose the last two games pretty easily. And if they do, they dramatically improve their draft position going into the next draft in April. They could go potentially, realistically, as I look at it, right now they're 15th. They could get a top 10 draft choice. I mean, they could move into position number 7, 8, maybe 9, maybe even as good as 6, probably somewhere around 9 or 10. And that's a significant difference. That is a major difference. The quality of an individual you're going to get at draft position 15 versus draft position 9 is night and day. Yeah, they're both going to be starters, but it's the difference between, like Trey just said, calling from Duncanville, being the top left tackle in all of college football, or the second best lineman or third best lineman in college football. It's a significant draft enhancement. It makes a significant difference. It's draft capital. And the other interesting thing about that's assuming Dallas actually takes and drafts a person at that position. What if Dallas gets the, I don't know, call it the 8th draft position? Might they trade away number 8 to a team for the number 15 pick and their second round pick? I mean, now you got draft capital. You could make some changes and get more players. So there's a little, the marketability, the value that Dallas gets by getting a 8th or 9th place draft player versus 15 is the difference between a Ferrari and a Ford Explorer. It's significant. So there's an advantage to a team like Dallas to quote-unquote soft tank the rest of the position. Let me be clear about CeeDee Lamb. If the Cowboys were still in the playoff hunt, he'd be playing. Be clear about that. If the Cowboys were in the playoff hunt and really had something to play for, CeeDee Lamb would still be playing. He would not be benched the last two games, quote-unquote, for an injury. So one could make an argument. This is a little bit of a soft tank. This is a little bit of a, you know what? You can position any way you want. We know we're not. We know we're out of the playoffs. Dak's out. We're injured across the board. Our only hope is CeeDee Lamb. Let's sit him, and it's okay if we lose the last two games. Or, you know what? Let's sit several players so we definitely lose the last two games. But let's not transcribe it to the fans and piss them off. And let's improve our draft capital. Now, the one that's interesting here, the person that's real interesting here is Mike McCarthy. How's that play out with Mike McCarthy? And is he on the same page with ownership and leadership in the team and the team? A lot of implications. How'd you like to be that left tackle? How'd you like to be? How'd you like to be some of the key players on the Cowboys right now, knowing that your bonus depends on whether you win or not, and they're sitting CeeDee Lamb? Wouldn't sit well with me. I want to continue the conversation about CeeDee Lamb. Got to hit bottom of the hour news. Sean Allen and John Ingram in the newsroom coming up with some updates, news stories. I'm sure this is part of the news story. And on the other side of it, we'll continue the conversation about CeeDee Lamb. Then I want to talk about Beyonce and her performance yesterday. It was a major mover across social media, and I'll tell you more about that coming up about 6 minutes after the news. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Just saw some numbers moments ago about the viewership yesterday on Netflix for the NFL games, and it was significant. Saw earlier a video at the end of the NBA game, the Lakers game, with LeBron James, who was being interviewed at midcourt, and he said, I love the NFL. I do. I love the NFL, but this is our day. Well, let me tell you. This, as in Christmas Day, ain't your day, LeBron. I hate to tell you that. I'll tell you more about that in about 3 minutes on the numbers. Westside Jeff is my name in for Chris Crock on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. Also talk about CeeDee Lamb. You just heard John Ingham in the newsroom doing the news talking about CeeDee Lamb. Yesterday, or just a few hours ago, got a breaking news alert that CeeDee Lamb is going to be taken out of commission for the Dallas Cowboys. He is ruled out for the rest of the season with a shoulder injury. And I told you a moment ago, quote me on this, if the Cowboys were still in the hunt for the playoffs, he'd be playing. Listen, I play fantasy football, and that's your worst nightmare in fantasy football is coming down to the last week or two of the season. For my league, this is the last week. The winner takes the trophy, and this week in my league, it's me versus Lady Danny, a woman in our league. She, when I first got in the league about 4 years ago, I was told she's the one to beat, and I said, good, I'll enjoy beating her. I won 3 years ago. I came in third place last year. And if I win this week, I'll win the league again for the second time in 3 years. Lady Danny and I are competing, and she's got CeeDee Lamb. So when I saw the breaking news alert on the WBAP app, by the way, if you don't have the app, download it. Go to your app store, type in WBAP, and it's a free app. You download it, and you get breaking news alerts as they happen. We'll keep you up to speed on everything going down. And you can also use that app to listen to the radio. If you want to weigh in, 800-288-9227 is my number, 800-288-WBAP. You can also hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff. So CeeDee Lamb's being sat down, and the most valuable player on this team, clearly. That's why they signed him to a 4-year, $136 million extension in August. Keeps the 25-year-old receiver here in Dallas for long term. He's a difference maker. He's a generational talent. Fact is, there are just some guys that are always open. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lamb, 3 guys that are always open. And they're like the Waffle House. They never close, always open. You can always throw a ball to them, and when in doubt, they'll catch it most times. CeeDee Lamb sitting out to the final 2 games. If they lose the last 2 games, the Cowboys can dramatically improve their draft position for the April draft, and the difference between drafting, call it 8th or 9th in the draft, and drafting 15th, which is about where they sit right now, is significant. So there's an advantage for Jerry and the team to sit CeeDee and say, you know what? CeeDee's got some injuries, doesn't need surgery, but we need to rest him, so we're going to sit him the next 2 games and to lose those 2 games. Now, that's always a challenge because you're sending a message to the locker room. The locker room knows if CeeDee can play or not. You know and I know he can play. If the Cowboys were in the hunt for the playoffs, CeeDee Lamb would be playing, but because they're not, he's sitting. So I'd hate to be one of those other players that your bonuses are on the line, and this is the difference between, salvaging something and not salvaging something. So it's always a tough time. It's one thing to be at the bottom of the heap like Jacksonville or Carolina Panthers that you know there's no chance and all get out that you can win anything. You've got 2 or 3 wins to your season and a team that's in the playoffs. But the middle ground is that most dangerous, and that's where we are as the Cowboys, middle ground, because we just now this week have determined we're out of the playoffs. But it's the difference between having a respectable season and not a respectable season. Is this a soft tank? Are the Cowboys tanking the last 2 games purposely to improve their draft position? And that comes down to an issue of competitive balance. Roger Goodell's told us all along it's about competitive balance. It's all about competing in a balance of competitive balance. Do teams do that? Do teams say, you know what, between us, let's just sit our star players and play as well as we can. And if we win, we win. But you know what? If we don't win, that's okay. We improve our draft position. Of course they do. You know they do. Hell yes, they do it. Are the Cowboys doing it? My gut is yes. Again, if the Cowboys were in the playoffs, he'd be playing. But because they're not, it's time to bench him. Let's see what the other guys can do. Let's see how we do. I want to talk about Beyonce in a few minutes, but before I do, yesterday was the first time I can remember the NFL played 2 games. And it was interesting that what they did is they had 2 back-to-back games that were on Netflix, the first time Netflix broadcast NFL games. So we talked about this on Monday night. how much buffering would we have? Remember a couple weeks ago you had Mike Tyson and Jake Paul, that fight that nobody could watch, that just lit up the web, lit up social media because people were all hacked off because they couldn't get in? Well, I was curious how this was going to happen this time, because Jake Paul, Mike Tyson's one thing, but the NFL is something different. This is a 100,000-pound gorilla, the NFL. And so LeBron played yesterday, and after the game, he was very vocal at mid-court with an interview with whoever, was it Doris Burke? I forget who it was. That he said, I love the NFL. I do. I love the NFL, but this is our day. And he spoke loudly and clearly. He was passionate. This is our day. I mean, this is the day of the NBA. Well, LeBron, I hate to tell you, it's not. Because guess what? You got usurped in a big-time way. The Wednesday doubleheader yesterday on Netflix set records as the most streamed NFL games in the United States in the history of the NFL here in the U.S., with numbers nearly 5 times more than the NBA. The Baltimore Ravens game, their victory over Houston Texans, that was the second game, averaged 24.3 million viewers. The Chiefs and the Steelers game averaged 24.1 million viewers. That's 5 times what the NBA average. Nielsen also said there were about 65 million U.S. viewers who tuned in for at least 1 minute of those 2 games. Now, the NBA's 5-game slate averaged, because they had 5 games yesterday throughout the day, they averaged about 5.25 million, so just 5.25 million viewers per game across ABC, ESPN, and its platforms. The NFL did 5 times that. Again, LeBron James said in his televised post-game interview yesterday, last night, he said, I love the NFL, but Christmas, this is our day. LeBron, I hate to tell you, it ain't your day, buddy. You just got beaten, usurped by the NFL. You're playing second fiddle, my friend. Though the NBA's Christmas lineup had its best viewership numbers in 5 years, the NFL's made Christmas one of its tentpole or flagpole events during the regular season, joining kickoff weekend and Thanksgiving weekend. The numbers speak for themselves, and LeBron can have his own view on it, and I'm sure more people will look at it because of that. But the NFL dramatically beat the NBA. It is the most watched, the most viewed, the most social media'd. The NFL is the biggest thing in this country, period. It beats NBA, hockey, and Major League Baseball combined. Period. It does. The NFL's king. And it continues to get stronger. And that's why we're talking CeeDee Lamb and being benched the last 2 games because of an injury. And that's why next I want to talk about Beyonce. You want to know why Beyonce trended all day yesterday? We'll talk about that about 3.5 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Crocker, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. You know, another story that caught my eye, I've been kind of... You know, there's some things in life that happen that when they happen and I hear about them and read about them, I go, is it something or is it nothing? Well, this is one of those things. It's something, and I think it's more significant than you're giving attention to. I saw a story earlier this week about how many Americans are politically exhausted coming out of the election. I get it. So you still have an eye on it, and you still have an eye on what's going on around the world news, but maybe not the attention to detail that you normally would. I want to talk about this story, and it's a story about the airline crash, the Azerbaijan airline crash across the seas, because that's important and it could impact us. There's something to that story. There's something that sticks out to me about that story and a couple others that when you add A plus B plus C, it's like, whoa, maybe there's something there. We'll talk about that in 15 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crocker right now, we're talking about CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys. CeeDee's being sat the final 2 games. I call it a soft tank. It's the old, you know what, he's our most valuable player. Let's sit him, and if we lose 2 games, and so be it, we get a better draft choice. But the guy I feel bad for is Mike McCarthy, because there's all the talk about is he or isn't he going to be re-signed. Well, if you're Mike McCarthy and CeeDee Lamb, your number 1 player, gets benched or sat because of injury, because your owner comes down and says, you know what, let's sit him. You're coaching for your job. with some of your roster tied behind your back because of injuries. But that's what Jerry does. That's what the Jones family does. They meddle in things, and that's why I think it's important for this team. If you want to put really bring back the glory days of the Dallas Cowboys and make them competitive and make them a really, truly America's team again, then I think you need a general manager that's not the owner to make some key football decisions. That's my opinion. It's Jeff, Westside Jeff, and for Chris Crock. Yesterday, I mentioned a moment ago that the NFL, the two games that were streamed on Netflix, I was pleasantly surprised to see that they were not buffering all day. My connection was pretty good. How was yours? Love to hear your perspective on what you saw, what you experienced. 800-288-9227. I didn't have a problem. It was great. And in the middle of Houston Texan game, they did a Super Bowl style halftime show featuring Beyonce. Now, I remember Beyonce was one of the members of Destiny's Child. For those of us that are a little older, I remember those days. She's the top-selling musical artist in the country. She's a very, very dominant player in the music business, married to Jay-Z. So I watched that halftime show. In the middle of it, I got up and went upstairs to my house, brushed my teeth, took some meds, still heard it because I had it cranked up. I'm not a Beyonce fan personally, and it has nothing to do with anything other than, to me, Beyonce songs all sound the same. The tone, the cadence, the voice, the quality of her voice, it just sounds the same to me. And the melody's a little different, the beat's a little different. Yeah, but in the end, her sound is the same. So to me, she's not my kind of artist. But she hit a controversial nerve in the industry and across radio just a few months ago. She came out with, quote unquote, a country song, Texas Hold'em. And when that came out, I saw social media light up then that said, that's not country. And one of the stations I work within is a country station, and I agree with them. Country radio, country music to me is defined by artists that tell a story. And, I think of Morgan Wallen. I think of Luke Bryan. I think of Luke Combs. Remember that Taylor Swift started out in country, but she's not a country artist anymore. She's really transitioned into pop. But when I think country, today's country music, I think Luke Combs. I think Chris Stapleton. I think those artists. I don't think Beyonce. So I was scrolling across social media to look at how social media is viewing Beyonce. And I was surprised at some of the stuff I read. I saw many posts about this across multiple social media sites. Everywhere I went and saw social sites talking about Beyonce, there was hundreds, if not thousands, of responses. And for the heck of it, I had to scroll through and see what they look like. And I printed out some of them, so I've got them. I saw a comment from a woman named Frida that said, she's so overrated. Well, there were a lot of threads attached to her post, and I knew where they were going. Now, Frida's a black woman, because I had to look her up. And I can't believe the comments, the follow-up comments to that. Many of them were calling her racist. You see, that's the interesting thing about Beyonce. In 2024, 2025, there are absolute lovers of Beyonce. And I find that if you are a lover of Beyonce and somebody doesn't like her and has a comment or disagrees with it, so many of those folks, it's real simple, real easy to claim racism. You don't like her because she's black. No, not the case for me. I don't care what her skin color is. I don't care enough ethnicity. To me, it's all about every song that she sings sounds the same for me. Now, I saw one response to Frida. It said, yeah, of course she's so overrated. So is your hair. So now it went to self-attacks, right? I saw another one that said, hey, Frida, once upon a time I would have agreed with you. One thing for sure, if I were to pay these high ticket prices, I know I'd get my money's worth from a Beyonce concert. Current artists don't put up enough show for a month's worth of rent and a flight. I'm not paying to see someone rap in one spot in their discount best attire. It's sad out here when it comes to artistry now. And I can't disagree with that. The price of concerts today is exuberant. And I know this about concerts. I've seen hundreds of concerts because I've been in the radio business all my life. So I've had the very good fortune of getting tickets to shows, shows. So I've seen a lot of good shows. And I would say I've become a little bit of a concert snob. When you see enough concerts, your perspective on what's a really good concert, what's a really good show, and what's not kind of changes. It used to be, almost anything stuck out as a really good show. But anymore to me, I don't want to go see a concert. I want to attend a party. Let me explain. A concert to me, somebody once said to me, I was on the radio. I grew up in the state of Ohio, in Columbus, Ohio, and I was on a station up there a few years ago. I was talking to somebody about this time of the year, and we were talking about concerts because several concerts had come through. And we were talking about good concerts and bad concerts that we've seen. And one of them I said is a group that I thought would be really good, and I've seen 3 or 4 times, and to me they're not, is Pink Floyd. And the guy I was talking with, my kind of co-host partner at the time, just blasted me and said, "You're nuts." I said, "Listen, if you want to see a Pink Floyd concert, I'll do you a favor. You give me $20. You come to my house after we get off the radio. I'll turn out all the lights. I'll crank up Pink Floyd. I'll turn on some strobe lights. I'll blow some dope in your face, and you will not know the difference if you're at a Pink Floyd concert or not," because that's what it was like. They sounded fine, but they just played the music from one song to another. They never interjected anything. To me, a great concert, a great show is I want to be entertained. One of the things about Beyonce is I've never seen her, but from what I've seen from some of the shows she's done, a lot of dancing, a lot of style, a lot of wardrobe changes. It's almost like a Broadway series type performance. That I can appreciate. Again, her voice just doesn't hit me because every song sounds the same. So when I go to a concert, I want to be romanced. I want to be entertained. Example, I love Billy Joel shows back when Billy was not a drunk, quite honestly, is before, and I saw his a video series he did from Madison Square Garden. I loved it because in between songs, he would spend a minute and a half telling you about the song he was about ready to sing, and he talked to you. It was like talk radio. It was like this. It was a conversation with Billy. I felt like I was sitting there, just me and Billy, one-on-one. Never met the man, but I kind of felt like I had. And to me, that's what I need out of an entertainment, out of a concert, out of a performance. I want to be entertained from a perspective of, tell me what's behind the song. Tell me why you wrote the song. Give me the emotional impact. Tell me a story. Don't just sing me a song. Listen, you sing me a song, I can download a record. I can download an album. I can listen to the radio. I can buy a DVD. Don't just sing me a song. Entertain me. Tell me a story. Romance me. I sense Beyonce does that. But as I go through many of the comments online about Beyonce, again, several were talking about Beyonce yesterday performing at NRG Stadium in the halftime of the Houston Texans game. It was like a Super Bowl performance. She had her husband, Jay-Z, perform. Shabuzi showed up, and she had other performers too. But it's interesting in looking at the posts across social media. One of them said, "Hey, serious question for those of you that are saying that Beyonce is not country. Do you all consider Taylor Swift or Luke Combs country or similar artists?" My answer to that is Taylor, no. Taylor Swift started out in country but transitioned to pop radio. She's a top 40 type artist now, not a country artist. Luke Combs, yes, that's country. Chris Stapleton, yes, that's country. Let's see, Luke Bryan, yeah, that's country. Carrie Underwood, yeah, she started in country, but you know what? She's pop. So to me, it's not about that. It's about for Beyonce in particular. I just don't like her voice. It just doesn't hit me right. Same tone, same cadence. I mentioned Billy Joel a minute ago. Every time I hear Billy Joel's song, it's a little bit different. That's my take. I'd love to hear your opinion on Beyonce yesterday, on the CeeDee Lamb, on the NFL, on the ratings yesterday and watching the game. Love to hear your perspective. If you want to weigh in, the number's 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. Did you enjoy the Beyonce show or not? Am I off on this? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Love to hear your thoughts.